Every country has traditions, things from centuries ago that remind people today of their heritage. These traditions can be special festivals, specific clothing, or a manner of speaking or acting. People today who look back into their home country's history can also find traditions that were abolished or slowly erased over time. The novel Ties That Bind, Ties That Break by Lenzi Namioka describes one particular tradition with Chinese women that is no longer practiced today: binding one's feet to change their shape and size. The novel talks about the childhood of Ai-Lin Tao, youngest of three sisters in her wealthy family, as she grows up in China during the 1910s. During this decade, there was a lot of social and political change, and the traditions that had lasted for more than 1,000 years were forcefully modified. Ai-Lin's story has a similar defiance to tradition. She refuses to have her feet bound like her elder sisters and her mother. Her arranged marriage with a wealthy young boy is broken because of this defiance, greatly shaming her family name. As Ai-Lin partakes in things Chinese girls are not traditionally supposed to do or learn, she receives less and less support from her family. Without her family's help, Ai-Lin fears her adult life will be full of hardships and suffering. Even with a strong determination to make her own path in the world, Ai-Lin will have to pay a heavy price for breaking the ways of her ancestors. I did not know about foot binding until I read this novel, and the author explains the benefits and drawbacks to this tradition quite well. For listeners who do not know, foot binding was mostly done by upper-class women in China who would be married to rich husbands. These wives were seen as beautiful symbols to their husbands' wealth and prestige, with their tiny feet and swaying steps as they walked. The process was very painful and left the foot deformed, but countless women endured the suffering because it was what had always been done. It was only in the early 1900s that this tradition began to decline, and nowadays it is almost non-existent. Now, going against tradition like Ai-Lin does is a very risky move. Going against your family can be even worse. Ai-Lin's story reflects teenagers and young adults that ask why things are the way they are, seeing the old ways as strange or bad. As children enter adolescence, they become more independent from their parents, like Ai-Lin does here. She still respects her elders and believes she is Chinese, but breaking one tradition puts her in a lot of trouble. How would your family feel if you chose to not do something that your great or great-great-grandparents did? What about if you decided to partake in the traditions of another country or culture, maybe one your family hates? Would you be afraid of their anger, or not care about their reaction? Ties That Bind, Ties That Break is 151 pages long, its story of independence and conviction making it a good read for young adults today. Whether you are from China or not, Ai-Lin's story is one many teenagers can connect to as they step out into the wider world and away from the comforts of home. If you think you are brave enough to see what Ai-Lin has to deal with, the novel is available to read in the middle school library.